Today I wanted to show you guys how I create this motion blur style of edit in Photoshop. So we're going to start with this base image here, and I've already edited this in Lightroom, so I would definitely recommend doing your edits first and then bring this into Photoshop. And the rest is just effects. So let's begin. So the first thing you want to do is actually take your background and convert it to a layer. Then we're going to take that layer and make a copy of it. This way, if anything happens to our image, at least we have a reference point to use. So I'm going to go and hide the bottom one and use the new one. And the first thing I want to do is actually crop out the car. There's multiple ways you can go about this. For, for this tutorial, I'm going to go and keep it simplistic and just use the magic wand. The more precise way is to use the pen tool. I'm not an expert at that yet, but if you really did want to get a precise edit, I'd recommend that. There are YouTube videos explaining how to do that. But for this tutorial, I'm going to go ahead and just do it the simplest way, and we'll just go from there. Alright, so if you have some parts that aren't perfect, just go back, clean it up, kind of deselect or select where you need. In this case, I'm just going to remove that. And for the most part, this is fine. Okay, so let's go ahead and cut the car out. Alright, then we're going to paste that as a new layer. And then you just want to bring the car back to where it was originally. So after you've done that, the next thing you'll need to do is just go and hide the car for now, as we're not going to use that. And let's go back to the layer where you cut the car off from. So from here, what we want to do is actually fill in the contents with other things that are in the background. So what we'll do is we'll go to Edit, and we'll do a Content Aware Fill. So what this will do is Photoshop will determine what it thinks it should be inside of that fill based on other things in the background. It doesn't have to be perfect, just needs to be there. All right, so once it's there, Photoshop will actually create a new layer with that content. So what we'll need to do is actually merge that layer with the layer below it where you cut the car off from. So let's go ahead and merge those. Okay, so now that we have that, we can actually apply the motion blur. So using that layer, let's go to blur and let's go to motion blur. So from this tool, all you have to do is pick the angle of the blur and the distance. In this case, my car was kind of in this diagonal direction, so what we're going to do is kind of use that angle of the car, and then I'm going to go ahead and make it look pretty fast, so I'm going to apply a distance of maybe about 200. Alright, so there you go. And now you can bring back the car and you can kind of get an idea of where we're going here. Alright, so now that we have the background blur, now we're going to apply the blur to the car itself. So let's take the car, let's make a copy of it, plop it right back to where it used to be, and now let's hide one of those and work with one of those layers. So the first thing I want to do is actually apply a spin blur to the rim itself. So let's go to Blur Gallery and go to Spin Blur. This is a pretty neat little tool. For this, we're going to put it right in the center, and then we're going to go ahead and make the diameter a little bit smaller here. Oh, I'm using the wrong one. Probably am. There we go. Okay, so we can adjust it perfectly here and kind of zoom in. So just right now you want to make this pretty much to the size of the rim. Okay, this feels pretty good. And then the next thing, to actually apply the spin, you have the blur angle over here, and then we'll set that to maybe about 115. We want it to look like it's going pretty fast. All right, once you feel pretty good about it, just click on OK. And then we're going to apply the same thing to the rear wheels. So let's go ahead and do a spin blur as well. All right, make this a little bit smaller here. Computer's going a little slow. Sorry, this is a little bit laggy here. All right, almost there. Okay, and then we'll do the same blur angle here. Okay, so now we'll just hit OK, and hopefully we look like we have spinning wheels. Cool. All right, so the last thing is we actually need to apply a blur to the tire. So we'll go back to the layer we created of just the car, and let's add a path blur. Let's go ahead and experiment with that. So what's cool about a path blur is you can just tell the direction of the blur by using these points here. So in this case, I'm going to say the blur is moving in this direction, and what we'll do is we can adjust the speed over here. I'm just going to make it like maybe about 33%. Let's see what that looks like. Maybe a little bit slower. Okay. And so this is another tool that you can use. This is pretty neat. But go ahead and create a path blur and kind of play around with how you want this to look. But once you feel pretty good about it, click on OK. Now obviously we don't want the whole car blurred, we only want the wheels. So how we can go about that is just applying a layer mask. So we'll click on the layer, and then we'll click on this little icon down here to apply a layer mask. And so what we'll need to do next is select everything and then actually add in a fill and make it black. So the reason for this is what we're going to do is we're just going to use a paintbrush and we're going to fill in the parts where we want the blur to happen. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make the layer with the wheel spin. I'm going to actually make that visible. I'm going to go back to this layer and select the mask part, the one that's black. And then using a white paintbrush, I'm going to apply the blur to the parts of the image that I want it to go. So I'm just going to trace the outline of the tire here. I'm also going to do the same for the rear tire. And you can be more precise. And then what I'm going to do is just kind of maybe the bottom of the car here, maybe to the front bumper. Just do a little bit around it too, just to kind of give it just a little extra effect. All right. So this is not bad, but you also need to make sure you apply it to the reflections too. So I'm just going to just apply it to some areas here to give it that effect, even more of an effect. So I want to be very careful here and apply it to the most reflective areas. I don't want to lose too much detail, just want some blur here. It's like this is the Bob Ross part of the whole thing. All right. And so obviously you can finesse as much as you want, but that's pretty much the idea. And there you go. So now we have a motion blur style of edit. So clearly there's more things you can do to this. I'm sure there are multiple ways to achieve the same effect, so definitely play around with this. This is not a perfect edit, but it is definitely something you can fool a lot of people on Instagram. So have fun with it. Let me know if this tutorial helped you out or not. There's plenty of other videos out there that also give you some great reference points. But thought this is pretty fun, and I've had a lot of fun making these. So here you go. That's all I got for today. Thanks for stopping by.